After we understand how we calculate these various measures of cost, we can talk about their pattern. Okay, and especially for AFC, ABC, ATC, and MC, marginal cost. Okay, now let's look at the AFC first. We find that the AFC continues to decline when we produce more and more, right? And this is because, again, for the same coffee maker, for example, okay, if we produce 1 cup of coffee, then the whole fixed cost, $3, would just fall into this cup of coffee, right? If we produce 2 cups of coffee, we still use the same coffee maker, so the cost of the coffee maker can be shared between these 2 cups of coffee, right? The more we produced, the fixed cost can be spread over more units of output. That's why it continued to decline all the way to 30 cents per cup of coffee. Okay. All right, and this is so-called the spreading effect. Okay, and it says the fixed cost can be spread over, okay, among these units of output. Now, when we look at the average variable cost, we find that it starts with 30 cents, okay, per cup of coffee, and it continues to go up all the way to $1.20. What does this mean? This means to be able to produce 1 cup of coffee, we have to spend more and more on variable inputs. Okay, that's why we'll get a higher and higher variable cost. Now, why we want to spend more? Why we have to spend more on variable inputs? Because each unit of variable input becomes less productive. Okay? Now, let me say this again. When we produce more and more cups of coffee, each unit of variable input becomes less and less productive. Okay? Strictly speaking, I should say the last unit of variable input added to production becomes less productive. Okay, now you probably already feel like this sounds a little familiar, right? This is exactly what we discussed before. It's called law of diminishing returns to labor. Okay, previously we talked about labor as a variable input, right? So the workers becomes less productive. So to be able to produce the equal amount of output, we have to hire more and more workers. Okay. Now this is so-called the diminishing returns effect. Okay, diminishing returns effect. Now the average total cost starts from $3.30 and decreased all the way to $1.30, and after that it start rebounding and eventually go to $1.50. In other words, this is actually a U-shaped curve. Okay, ATC takes a U shape. Now this is because the ATC is affected by here the AFC and ABC. Remember, AFC is downward sloping, it gets lower and lower, but ABC is upward sloping, it gets higher and higher. So when we combine these two, we find that the ATC is U-shaped. Okay, so it is, the combination of the spreading effect and the diminishing returns effect. Okay. Now the last column, when we look at the marginal cost, we find it continues to go up. It's very similar to the AVC. So the economic intuition behind this rising MC curve is the same. It's law of diminishing returns. Okay, so as I just mentioned, the last unit of labor or the variable input added to production becomes less productive. Okay, so to be able to produce the equal amount of output, we have to add more and more each time. Okay, that's why the marginal cost continue to go up. All right, so here I will give you a summary of these, what we just discussed. Okay, so several important observations on the cost graph. Okay, the first one is a diminishing AFC. The larger the output, the greater the quantity of output over which fixed cost is spread, okay, leading to a lower AFC. This is called the spreading effect. Okay. And the second one is a rising AVC. Okay. The larger the output, the greater amount of variable input required to produce additional units, leading to a higher AVC. This is so-called diminishing returns effect. Okay, and later we'll also talk about the rising marginal cost curve. It's also caused by the diminishing returns effect. Okay, and eventually, when we put the AFC and the AVC together, we look at the ATC, average total cost. We find it's U-shaped because there's an interaction between the spreading effect and the diminishing returns effect. Okay. All right. When we put them on the graph, in a general way, this is what we find. Okay. Of course, on the worksheet we ask you to plot these curves, so you really have to find point by point on the graph, and then collect these points to get the cost curves. Okay. Here, what we show you is a more general format. Okay. Now you find two new things on this graph. Okay. The first one is previously, we find that MC should continue to go up. Okay, and the ABC is also continuing to rise. But here we actually find the downward sloping part of marginal cost and average variable cost. Okay, why? How could it be downward? Remember, we said the law of diminishing returns is universally true. Then how could we still have this downward sloping one, which is contradictory to LDR, right? This downward sloping part is caused by the specialization of labor. Okay, so the economic intuition behind this is the variable input we added to the production becomes more productive at the beginning. How could that be? Now, suppose once again you're running the coffee shop, right? If you're the only one working there, so what you have to take care of is you have to grade your customers when they come in, right? You have to take their orders. You have to after they place the order, you have to go and make the coffees and other things they order. Eventually you have to clean the table, right? So you would find yourself spend a lot of time running back and forth, switching among these different tasks. Okay. However, if you hire the worker, the second worker joining you, right? You're the first one, and you hire another one joining you, and you would better focus on what you really want to do, right? If you're really good at making coffee, you can just stand behind the coffee making machine and keep doing that, and the worker you hired could just grade the customers and take their orders. Okay, so you don't have to waste any time running back and forth or switching among the tasks. Now when you hire the third worker, and probably all three of you becomes even more productive, okay, because each of you would just stand there, okay, and do just one thing instead of multiple things, okay. So what we're trying to tell you is, especially for the small businesses, they would they're more likely to see this specialization of labor, okay, because each person can focus on what he or she is really good at, okay. And then after that, very quickly, when the firm becomes mid-sized or even large, or multinational, and these very gigantic firms, then they're going to experience that law of diminishing return. Okay, so the MC and the ABC will continue to go up. Okay, all right. And another thing we would like to point out is you would find that MC crosses the bottom of ABC and ATC. How so? How could we be sure that the MC crosses the bottom? Okay. Now remember here, the way we could interpret this crossing the bottom is when MC stands lies above ATC and ABC, then these two average cost curves are gonna go up, okay, gonna be upward sloping. When MC stays below the ATC or ABC, both curves are sloping downward, okay. If we can prove that, then we would be confident that MC crosses the bottom of these two average cost curves, okay. Now here it's actually pretty easy to prove that. We said that MC is a marginal cost, right? So it's just like you suppose this is your junior year, okay, and you have the GPA from the three years you study at the college, right? Now you're taking this course, you're going to earn a grade. If the grade you receive from this course is higher than your GPA, let's say your GPA is 3.0, but you receive A from this course, right? Then we would believe after the end of this semester, your updated GPA would be higher, right? Because again, you earn an A from this course, which will help you improve your cumulative GPA, right? However, if you earn a C or D in this course, which is below 3.0, then it's going to decrease or lower your cumulative GPA, right? This is pretty easy to understand. This is exactly what we find on this graph, okay? So MC would be the grade from this course. ATC or ABC would be your cumulative GPA, okay? If you're doing better in this course, then your cumulative GPA, it's gonna lift your cumulative GPA up. If you're doing worse in this course, then your cumulative GPA, it's just gonna lower the GPA, right? So because of what we just mentioned, we know that MC crosses the bottom of these two average curves. Okay, so later when you draw these curves, please be careful about these graphical details, because behind each detail there's an economic intuition, right? Now in the next video we're gonna wrap up this chapter. Okay.